Last week, you saw the flowers that were coming into bloom through my June flower farm tour. This week, it's time to put those flowers into bouquets. We've got a big week coming up for this farm. It's gonna be our first flower subscription of the month pickup. I've got a DIY bucket pickup, which is a newer product offering that I've officially put onto my website. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about those. But first, we are going to do some harvesting. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to harvest certain flowers. Then we're going to get into a little bit of a math and business related conversation, specifically as it pertains to pricing. And over the past couple of years, what we've done is we've always assigned a value per stem. And I find that that actually may not be the best approach during times of the year like this, where I have a lot of perennials. And then of course, we're going to cap it off by making bouquets. Right now, it's Tuesday morning around 7 a.m. I do have to go into the office, so we're not doing a massive amount of harvesting, but I am going to harvest a few stems. I want to explain why it's really critical for me to get out at a time like this to harvest stems that could be ready for me to harvest even later. Here is a lily that is ready to be harvested. And this is an LA hybrid, which means that it is non-fragrant and it has these upward facing blooms, making them really easy to work with in bouquets. Now, this is a perfect time to harvest a lily because it has colored up, and we know that within a couple of days, this is going to start opening. Now, I had mentioned that it is possible to wait the full day. It's going to be about 75 degrees today, at which point I would expect this to start opening. I don't want that to happen because I obviously want the most amount of vase life for something like a flower subscription member. Here's the thing. These, when harvested today, will go into my refrigerator. I do not have a walk-in cooler. At this point, I have one refrigerator. I used to have two refrigerators. I've taken everything back in terms of scaling and said to myself, I want to be really efficient in terms of moving stems. So even though this will go into the refrigerator, when I start making bouquets, I'm not going to be able to fit all of those bouquets into the refrigerator to store on Thursday night going into Friday. And it is going to get a lot warmer. We are going to get into the 80s. So I do expect this to open by the time the customer picks it up, which is not a bad thing because customers do like to see some open buds. And of course, there will be another bud over here, if not a third one, that will not have opened by that time. But I'm trying to delay the time in which it opens and how far it opens by making sure that I'm harvesting as early as possible to preserve at this state in the cooler until I make the bouquets. So for me, harvesting the lilies at that right stage is absolutely critical to being able to provide the best quality of blooms for my customers. It is now a few hours later after work, and I want to prioritize harvesting the yarrow over here. So you saw me earlier, I was in a sweatshirt. It's pretty crazy how cool it's been in the mornings, especially the last few days. We are about to get into this heat wave. So today was 74 at its high. Tomorrow is going to get into low 80s. And by next week, we're going to get into the high 90s. So someone made a joke that New Jersey weather is like going from Seattle to basically Death Valley temperatures. But anyway, I want to prioritize harvesting the yarrow right now, and I'm going to explain why. These are some nice beefy yarrow stems. And the thing about yarrow is that you need to give it a little bit of time for all of the florets to open up. So this is a really good example where this is ready, and you can do the wiggle test. So you can see when I shake it, it's not super floppy. The center is shaking together versus if I did something like this is a lot more floppy. So the way that yarrow opens up is that all of these side shoots will never all fully open up together with the center, because by the time that happens, the center is going to look tired and basically done. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like because it started happening over here. So this is a really good example where you can see that some of these are getting less saturated in red color. They're almost starting to dry out from the center. That's when you know that those are pretty much done. So one of the reasons why I'm harvesting the yarrow today is because I want to make sure that I'm getting all of the ones at their prime like this away from that heat that is going to start building tomorrow. Many of us who farm part-time have pockets of time that we can make sure that we're taking advantage of. And if I had enough time this morning, I would have harvested the yarrow. But given the small amount of time I had, I chose to prioritize those lilies, knowing that I could come back and harvest these yarrow right now because they would be okay sitting in this mid 70-degree weather throughout the day and still be able to hold beautifully well until later in the week when I'm making bouquets. So that's about 2 days away, and still be able to give my customers a fantastic vase life. And this is why I love yarrow so much. Yarrow will likely outlive something like a lily in this arrangement, maybe even the double echinacea. It will definitely compete with the sea holly in terms of how long it can last, but yarrow just inherently has a really long vase life. So it gives me a lot of buffer in terms of when I want to harvest a little bit earlier and even later, just because I have so much volume of yarrow over here to harvest. So you can see I've got a patch behind here, but then all the way in the back over there too, I've got a patch. So we're going to be fueled by yarrow in our bouquets. The other thing about yarrow is that I always wear gloves because I tend to get this red rash if I don't wear it. I don't know if that happens to anyone else, but that's just a watch out for those of you who haven't harvested yarrow before. Make sure you sleeve up and protect yourselves. This area is a great example of some yarrow that has matured too far beyond harvesting. So this one over here, you can see how the florets in the middle have started to almost shrivel up and dry a bit. This color, which is a little bit more pink, tends to yellow up when it does that. So this is like the original color, and then it turns into this like yellowish pink color afterwards. Some of these stems did not grow very straight either. Last year I had to corral my yarrow because of how much wind and storms we were getting. This year I haven't had to do that. So even though we've been getting rain, it's been steady, consistent rain and not like super windy. So that's been good. But you can see over here that I have a lot of yarrow that honestly, a lot of these might go to waste. I'm going to let the pollinators have at it, which is still a great use of this, but I'm not going to spend my time harvesting these really, really small blooms when I have much beefier bloom heads from the other patch and from other areas that you can see over here. But I want to show you that having microclimates in your growing area is very real. Dividing out certain crops into these microclimates, especially if they're perennials, is a good idea from that regard, because you can have a little bit of a staggered succession over a couple of weeks, which could be really helpful if you're trying to achieve consistent bouquets. And overall, I think I'm going to have enough yarrow for my bouquets. Yarrow does wilt very easily in the heat, so you want to make sure that you are harvesting early in the morning or later in the evening. When I harvest, I am not only stripping the stems, but I am also taking off the side shoots that I know will flop over even if I hydrate them. There are about 70 stems in here. I think I'm going to need 100 to be able to make all the bouquets that I want. So luckily we still have a few more days left, but this is a really great start. I'm going to let these sit in this water. These are dirty stems because they're yarrow. So after, when they've sat for a couple of hours, I will clear the water and then put a CVBN tablet into that water so that it can rest for a couple of days. I'm actually also going to move this to a square or rectangular bucket that's going to support them in their longer stem length. It is starting to get into those Death Valley temperatures. I'm kidding. It's only like 85 degrees today, but it's very muggy. I'm sweating because we just worked out. I am going to be harvesting some more stems, especially the lilies, but that's not what I'm showing you right now. I want to show you the realities of flower farming without chemicals, having a complete no spray mindset. And I'm showing you this because a lot of people go into flower farming thinking it must be so nice to grow stuff without chemicals. And then the reality hits of there's a reason why chemicals were created, and it's because of things called pests and disease. I have mentioned many times in my videos that I deal with something called the scarlet lily beetle, which is prevalent here in the Northeast, but I'm also hearing is out in the Midwest. What it does is it eats your leaves, and then to compound that, it likes to lay larvae on the underside of the leaves, and then it likes to poop on the larva so that predators are not going to eat it. So this is a great example of a pooped on larva that is days away from being mature. And I have let scouting this beetle get away from me. I thought it was 2 weeks. I went back into the calendar. It's been a lot longer. You can see that there are just the lily beetles over here. They're wrecking a lot of havoc. And when they get mature and you start having these buds come out, you're going to start seeing that they chew on the bud over here. So you can see that this is so damaged that when this matures and unfurls, the petal's going to get really damaged. So this stem is completely useless. And this is a great example of bad damage. Like this is them decimating the whole lily. And basically like the lily can't even have enough energy to photosynthesize to be able to create blooms. So the remedy, or not the remedy, but if you are farming like me without any spraying, there really is only one way to get rid of these, and it is to come out and literally pick off these bugs and throw them into a bucket of water. So usually soapy water, but I found that just regular water can do. All of these came from this little area over here, which is bad because it's a testament to how far I've let it go, and really like this is my fault because I have definitely lost a few lilies from not being on top. And here's the thing, right? Like life happens. I have a full-time job. We obviously have a young daughter. Even though she's in remission from cancer, there's still things that I do with her that is trying to prevent her from relapsing, things like that. So I've got like, you know, like everyone has a lot on their plate, right? And the last thing you want to do is come out and scout for these lily beetles. And I was really on top of it in the beginning of the season, which got me to a certain point, meaning that these were able to bud up. But now we're seeing this. And I think that even worse, I'm suspecting that they're carrying some sort of disease, because you can see that these leaves over here have yellowed and really withered to the point where it's compromising the integrity of the lily being able to grow straight up. So these lilies are all going to come out at the end of the spring season. So I'm not going to perennialize these. They're going to go into the compost. I've gone 3 seasons out of them, so I'm happy enough. And I have plenty of other lilies. And the good news is that there is some lily beetle presence in other places, but this is by far the worst. I will say there is something really, really satisfying about coming in and just picking them up and throwing them in here. Now, I know that there's going to be a subset of people who are not going to understand why I choose not to spray at all. And it's honestly rooted in the why of why I started flower farming. I wanted to flower farm for sustainability reasons. I felt that I could convert a large piece of land that was a piece of grass, which is an ecological desert, and make it more beneficial for my little ecosystem of an environment. And it's something that I want to stick to, not to mention the fact that we are growing food in here. So whether it's synthetic or organic, I just don't want to spray, and I'm willing to deal with those consequences. The other 2 points I want to make is that when you push flowers to their limits in terms of trying to produce high quantities of them or produce them out of their typical growing season, you are ultimately going to get pest pressure. And the second piece is that pests exist for a reason. We call these insects pests because they are undesired creatures that are living in our flowers, eating our flowers, but they are ultimately a food source for the bugs that we call beneficials. So I'll give you a really good example. This is my first time growing sweet peas, and luckily I set out with the intention of growing them for seed. I finally have one that's flowering, but these sweet peas struggled from the very beginning. They were put out, they got nibbled on a bit, and luckily the peas that I'm growing for food have rebounded back and haven't had a lot of aphid pressure, but you can see that this sweet pea over here is riddled in aphids, and typically that is a signal that this is a very stressed out plant, because that's where pests like to go. All of these sweet peas have a lot of aphids. Now here's the thing, I could try to hose down these aphids, I could try to do something about it. Again, because I'm growing these for seed, it's less of an issue, but this is a great food source for the beneficials that are going to be coming soon, such as ladybugs. Ladybugs are going to lay larvae around here. The larvae are then going to eat the aphids. I can guarantee you, if I just wait a couple of weeks, you are going to see nature start taking care of this problem. So the point is that nature always will catch up. It will take care of itself. There's just a bit of needing to be at peace with not being able to harvest everything that you grow, and understanding that that just comes with the territory of wanting to farm this way. As this is my 4th year of flower farming, I've learned a few things along the way, such as not planting everything in a single row, scattering some of what you have into different parts of your field, not just from a microclimate standpoint to get blooms staggered, but also because you could be dispersing pest pressure as well as where beneficials are congregating. Things like yarrow are great for attracting beneficials. That's why I have them in 2 places throughout the field to be able to attract beneficials in multiple areas. I have lilies in all these different places. That way the red scarlet lily beetle is finding them in one place, but not necessarily all moving to another place. So you can see over here that I have a lot of lilies, and yes, there is some scarlet lily beetle pressure, but nowhere near the amount over there. And you can see that these all look pretty healthy, and I mean, these are coloring up and they look really great versus the other ones. All right, Eric is getting ready to pick up E, which means I don't have a lot of time because I got to harvest and then I got to go make dinner. So we are going to pick up tomorrow when I start making some bouquets. I am now on my lunch break, so I have about 45 minutes to pump out these bouquets. I'm doing an assembly line process, which is really inspired by the floret method. So for anyone who hasn't taken their mini course, I highly recommend it, because the 3rd video, I think in that installment, has a really good tutorial on how she makes really quick market bouquets. And I would say that in the past, I haven't done enough volume to warrant doing something like this, but I feel like with the amount that I need to make today, it definitely warrants it. Now, my CSA share is 14 people. 2 people are not going to be included in tomorrow's pickup. One is a coworker, so I bring it to work for her. That will be next week, and the other person can't pick up this week. And I do allow for 1 missed pickup to be made up at a later date, which is a single later date. So everyone who missed the pickup can pick up on that date. And it makes it logistically easier for me, but also gives people flexibility, especially during the time of summer when there might be a lot of travel and people just not spending time at home. So I'm going to show you my recipe. I'm also going to show you my process. And then later on, as I'm building the bouquets, I'm going to talk a little bit more about pricing. These are bouquets that are going to be powered by perennials. So literally everything that I laid out on the table: yarrow, sea holly, echinacea, mint, the alliums over here, as well as the lilies that you can't see in this bucket, are all perennials. The only ones that are not are this cilantro, which I grow more for culinary use. I let it bolt. And at that point, you can use it for more queen and lace and like a Orlea type of look, or you can allow it to really go to seed and have these like really cool dried seed pods. I've got a couple of stock and delphinium, which I'll be using interchangeably. So let's start building a bouquet. And what I did last night was I tested a little recipe. So I knew exactly how many stems I'm gonna have of each. And I'm gonna be very generous in these bouquets. These are $25 bouquets. These are for customers that have prepaid upfront. I have a very, specific view on my CSA customers. They're my best customers. About 50% of them come back. And so I wanna make sure that they get basically a better deal than what other customers might get, especially if they're shopping at like the retail store, which is great and everything. But at the end of the day, when you're signing up for something like a flower subscription, you are committing ahead of time for a certain amount of bouquets, and you are willing to pay for that amount. And I think that my customers should be adequately compensated for that kind of trust that they're putting into me, as well as that kind of support that they're lending. So that's why I do make these a little bit more beefier. I tend to overstuff a little bit relative to my other bouquets that are made for the store. So the recipe, as you can see that I'm building right now, is gonna be 3 lilies. It's gonna be anywhere from 7 to 10 yarrow, and I determine that number by how beefy the yarrow is. Some yarrow stems are really, really nice, and we'll call it they have a nice spray. Some of them are a little smaller like this. So in case if it's like this, I'm gonna count 2 as like 1 stem. And again, we're gonna talk about pricing a little bit later. I'm gonna do 2 sea hollies because like in my experiment or in my bouquet recipe last night as I was putting these together, I felt that they were they just looked better with a little bit more sea holly, and because these are perennials, I have that flexibility to be able to do that. I'm gonna put another lily stem over here on this one. And then it's a 2 echinacea or the rudbeckia that's starting to come in, but most of it is echinacea. 1 mint, which I've already put in here, 1 cilantro, 1 of these, we'll call it like spike type of texture, and then that's it. So I got a few more yarrow stems to put in here, and then this will be done. And what I want these to give the impression of is, wow, like what a bouquet. It's gonna last me for a while. So let's talk a little bit about vase life over here. The yarrow, the sea holly are gonna have the best vase life, probably like 2 weeks beyond. Even the mint is gonna have a pretty long time. Probably the least amount of days is gonna be the cilantro from the perspective of the white leaves or the white petals might start shedding a little bit. I would say the echinacea and the rudbeckia are gonna be probably around a week. The stock is probably gonna be about 5 days. And the lilies, I will give them more instructions next week, but these lilies will start opening up, and as long as they are taking off the spent bloom heads, the other buds will continue to open and also allow for that longer vase life as a focal. So this is done right over here. This is what it looks like, and I just realized I forgot my rubber band. So let me go get my rubber bands, but let me cut this first. And I am someone who likes to keep tidy versus sweeping up at the very end. I don't think it really matters, just a preference for me. Here are my rubber bands back from the days when I was doing Jersey cut market. My color was yellow, so hence why I am yellow. And what I've learned is that I want to wrap as I'm putting into the buckets, because if I put these into the buckets right now, they're going to get very tangled. So I can put like 2 in a bucket right now with water, and then when I'm about to be done, I'll wrap them all and then put all like 4 into a bucket. So the goal is to be able to fit 4 into a bucket. So now that I've shown you what that looks like, I'm gonna hopefully get cranking away. And what I'm just gonna do is I'm just gonna put a few rubber bands up here. I don't need the whole bag. Pricing is an ever-evolving topic that I'm beginning to realize is more of an art than a science. Traditionally, I assign a per stem value, which is based off of wholesale pricing that I had access to when I sold at a cooperative to florists, and then I multiply that wholesale pricing by 1 to 2 times. However, what stands out to me is how 2 flowers may be priced at the same price, yet they take completely different level of efforts to grow. For example, take a lily and a lisianthus. Both are priced at $2.50 wholesale and retail at around $4 where I am here in New Jersey. However, lilies can perennialize, which means that the cost of the bulb at 40 to 60 cents ends up costing a quarter of the price of a lisianthus plug, which costs me around 80 cents including shipping. Then, more importantly, the effort to grow is significantly different with lisianthus involving multiple rounds of weeding. Therefore, the profitability on each flower and therefore the bouquets is very different. For my flower subscription, I have 2 groups of bouquets: highly profitable bouquets powered by perennials versus those powered by annuals. The difference in profitability per bouquet is quite different, about $5 by my calculations. That's huge off of a $25 bouquet. If you want the details, I have it on my Patreon. It's $5 a month, and I have a flower farming business related article or video once per week. This is despite me overstuffing the bouquet and achieving these highly profitable numbers. So as you can see, having perennials really makes it possible for me to overstuff and yet remain profitable this time of year. So now I have 4 bouquets ready, and we are going to wrap them and put them into the buckets, and that will be 1 bucket. So I'll show you that process. So as you can see, I have my craft paper over here. This comes a big roll. It's 18 inches, and this is more of a rectangle than a square. And what I'll do is I'll fold it into a triangle like a mountain. And then what I'll do is I'll just lay the bouquet over here, close it up over here, do a quick staple. Oops, that of course didn't go all the way through. And then we're done. So this is what it looks like. Looks really cool. So I'll show it to you from another angle here. So fold this paper over here, lay a bouquet on top. Look at that. Like that, put a stapler through, and voila. I am really pleased with how these bouquets turn out. I really feel like that these bouquets are made pretty by the yarrow. There's just so many different colors in the yarrow that helps make any color combination honestly come together. Because I've got like yellow lilies, I've got like even orange lilies that typically you wouldn't think would do well, especially with a more spring type of palette. But I've got all these random bold colors that aren't clashing together and are doing fine because I have such a variety of color in the yarrow that's helping tie things together. And the sea holly, man, just really gives it that great oomph of blue. So here it is, there's 4. I might even be able to fit a 5th one in here, which would be great. But look at all these colors. I do have on my Patreon the specific emails that I am sending to customers. So I am templatizing those emails. So that way, every time I send out an email, it's really easy for me to just drag and drop stuff in there. I always am going to feature flowers. So this time I featured lilies, yarrow, and sea holly. Gave a little bit of a blurb around just like why they're so special. And yeah, look at these. They look so good. For $25, like this is a steal, but again, these are my best customers. So I will be making a couple of bouquets for the country store, and you're gonna see that those are not going to look like this. So onwards we go to making some more. Wow, this is a monster lily stem. So because this one has so many heads, I am only gonna put 2 lily stems in here, but no one's even going to know the difference. Whoops, I'm gonna put some yarrow in here before I do that. And this is why we condition our flowers like yarrow ahead of time. So that way we can leave them out on the table and not have to worry about them potentially wilting, because they've already had their drink of water and won't be super fussy as it comes to needing more water since they're already hydrated. These double echinacea are also just so like, they're so voluminous. Ooh la la. I like this. I love the combination of purple and orange over here. So I'm gonna make sure that gets in there. And of course, we're gonna make sure we get other pops of yarrow color in here. I hate to say this sea holly is a little too much. So I'm gonna edit out a couple of stems so it doesn't look like it's just a bunch of tangled sea holly in here. There we go. Perfect. I am trying my best to incorporate elements of the spiral method. Marie from Florist on Farms did a recent video on making a more European style spiral, I think it was, and it was an excellent video, and you guys should totally check that out if making bouquets and struggling with them, trying to be better at it is your thing. I think she has a bunch of really great videos that are honestly underrated. I think the YouTube algorithm is still trying to put her out in front of the relevant people. She's got a great channel in case if you want to get into flower design. Okay, there we go. Look at that. Sometimes I pause and I'm like, what would Marie say? What would Crane say even? So look at that. Powered by Yarrow. And one thing that I am really proud of now is the fact that I can make bouquets and talk while I'm making bouquets. I still remember in year one when I was trying to make market bouquets for the farmer's market, I really struggled to multitask and make bouquets. And it was one of those aha moments for me. It was like, wow, like bouquet making is a skill. It takes some kind of mental effort. And there has to be a certain type of muscle memory in place before you can really get sufficient at it to the point where you feel comfortable multitasking, even if that multitasking is just talking. So if you want to put yourself up to the test, I suggest that you try to tell a story as you are making bouquets and see how successful you are at telling that story without needing to pause or stop in making the bouquets. And if you feel comfortable making those without needing to take a big pause, then you have some level of muscle memory that's already embedded into making bouquets. Ooh, this allium is so cool. There's too much light purple in here, so I want to make sure there's a bit of a mix in here. And here's the good news, guys. I have so much yarrow outside that I can just harvest more if I need it. And I really do feel like that yarrow makes these arrangements in the sense that they help bulk it up in a way that doesn't feel like it's a lot of filler and overwhelming. It feels like that there's a lot of perceived value coming from the yarrow. So I love that about yarrow. Not to mention, it has so many great colors, like I mentioned. Okay. There we go, this one. We're gonna do a sprig of mint here too. Look at that, that looks so good. I love the allium pop too. Okay. Now, before I make the next bouquet, there was something that I wanted to talk about in terms of my cilantro and other flowers, especially fillers, that might grow in the same habit. So give me a second here to wrap this up. We've got 2 over here. All right, so this is what I'm talking about. Typically, you see this happening in things like Orlaya, whatever you want to call it. So I had actually just harvested this morning. That's why it's a little bit more wilty than the other ones, but it will bounce back. The reason why I wanted to show you this was because you will often have many stems that look like this, and this one stem has a lot of usable stems. So in this case, it's really easy to see that, well, this one, if you lop this part off, can become its own stem. This one over here can also become its own stem. And last but not least then, let's see, this one is also easier to recognize that it can become a stem. And typically, if you're going to get to this stage, you definitely want to edit out some of the side branching stems. But sometimes over here, it gets a little bit harder and you just have to choose a point where you want, this one feels a little bit more obvious that you want to take off this piece, which is probably a little too short to be its own stem, but I have someone who's looking for a DIY bucket with wildflower style stem, so I'm going to keep that. And then this one is obviously really good, usable, big stem. It's really floppy right now, again, because I probably harvested it about 3 hours ago, but I think that, or 4 hours ago, but plop it back into water and it'll be totally fine. I just don't like working with these floppy stems because sometimes it's hard to tell how they're gonna look in a bouquet if you have too many floppy stems. So, all right, oh, whoops, I need a lily. Look at that, oh. Now this is a lily that's supposed to be a double LA hybrid, which is a little harder to come across. And when you do come across the double LA hybrids, they tend to only be in like the more saturated colors like red, orange, the yellows. There's really like not a lot of pinks in that department, but this is like one of those oranges, like a sunset orange, that I think is really awesome. And it has done well for me in bouquet bars. And I'm really glad that I decided to perennialize these, especially by our landscaping bed near the house where it's a little warmer. And so therefore these are flowering way in advance of those that are in the field. So again, microclimates. And the deer did not get to these luckily because we had built a little bit of like a barbecue. And I think that the barbecue was hindering the deer from going behind that area, which is where these are, because last year they got munched down on, but not this year. So I'm always trying to provide a little bit of variety in the lilies so that they're not all getting the same kind of lily. I think it's totally fine if they get the same kind of lily, but because I have so many varieties, I have the luxury of not needing to do that. And you can see over here that I am going to run out of flowers. So definitely have enough to make this one and another one, but I will need to harvest some more later. And we are going to get a lot of flowers coming in because of how hot it is. But one of my objectives is to be able to crank out some bouquets right now. So that way I can free up Eric at night since he wants to wash the cars. We've been having weeks of rain and there's nothing Eric loves more than washing cars. So now that we've got over a week of intense heat in sight with no rain, he wants to wash the cars. You can see how I feel about washing cars, but everyone has their hobbies. Everyone has what they love, and for Eric, it's cars. Okay. Now, here's the other thing that I've learned about my customers, which is that as much as I love to think that they're going back and re-editing and making sure that it looks good in a vase arrangement, I have learned that they don't do that because they send me photos and my reaction to those photos is always, what are you doing? Because that doesn't look good in a vase arrangement. They think it looks fine. So that's why I also take a little bit more onus in terms of arranging in a way that I think is going to look great in the vase. And so I mentioned earlier that I'm going to send another email to them reminding them of things to do to take care of their flowers. the other thing I've learned is that in your initial email that you send to remind them to pick up flowers, sometimes they only read a part of it. They don't read all of it. So I want to deliver the most relevant information at the right time, and therefore it is a few days after when they get their flowers. They're probably going to be more interested in taking care of those flowers, and that's when I want to talk about vase life instructions. And again, I'll have that on my Patreon for those who want to see what I talk about. But right now I'm going to go get back to wrapping since I have 4 bouquets ready. You know what happened there? A tree fell. Yeah, it took the electrical line with it too. Chase the rainbow? As you can see, we just had a really crazy storm that was unexpected. It lasted for about 15 minutes, but in that 15 minutes, there was an onslaught of rain, a lot of wind, and basically zero visibility outside. E is very excited there's a rainbow and that she should be chasing it. But all I could think about was I had said I didn't have to corral my yarrow before, and I'm pretty sure my yarrow is probably flopped all over. So we're gonna go take a visit and see if we can help them back up. Oh boy, I had harvested some flowers earlier and the wind was so strong that they fell out. And this was not part of the harvest. This was a piece of, I don't know, branch that came from the tree over there. You can see how much wind pushed those leaves in here. So, oh no, my snaps. That looks very, very sad. For a 15-minute storm, it sure did a lot of damage. Look at that tree over there. So there's a rule in New Jersey, which is that even if the tree is on your property, which by the way, that tree is not, if it falls onto someone else's property, it's their problem. But we will likely help our neighbors who just went to Maine this morning. So they're going to come back to this surprise. I mean, look at this fence over here. There's so many leaves plastered to the side of the fence. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but look at that. All right, so walking to see the yarrow. Womp, womp, womp. They are all leaning down. And sometimes it's just the water weight. So I took a PVC pipe over here and I'm hoping to be able to wring off some of that water to get them back up. And the key is you want to do this relatively soon after the storm has passed through. So that way they don't stay flopped down overnight and have an ability to still stand up. So you can see they're already propping back up a bit more. Now, these will need to be harvested sooner than later because they already all are blooming. But the goal is to also hopefully get some usable stems out of the ones that have not yet fully finished blooming. Yeah, some of these might be lost causes. This is what you get for jinxing yourself by saying, I don't need a corral. All right. Damn. Look at that. All right. This isn't even like the money patch. Wow, look at this patch over here. This patch is definitely very sad looking. Oh my God, even my sunflowers are sad. Okay. Wow, look at the sea holly over here too. So I have never had to corral the sea holly, and you can see that they definitely got wind damage, but they're also pretty heavy from the water. So let's see. Man, this one storm might have ruined my crop for a couple of weeks. I think I have enough sea holly to make it out. And my lilies, luckily, have done really well. Look at these poppies over here. Ah, my potatoes! You can tell what I care more about. I care more about my food. Ay, ay, ay. I would be heartbroken if these potatoes didn't make it, but I don't think they won't. I think they need a little help. All right, so I've done what I could. I think I will still be able to make bouquets for next week for the country store. I'll have more than what I need because I don't do a lot of volume there. All I have to say is I am really glad that I had already made the CSA bouquets earlier today, had done all my harvesting. I mean, I still need to harvest a little bit more, but I've got enough usable stems here to be able to harvest, and this could have been a lot worse. I will say that I definitely got a lot more damage than I thought we were gonna get, but you know, my lilies, my rudbeckia, even my echinacea over here, and luckily the lisianthus all seem to be doing really, really well. You know, the biggest bummer right now is my potatoes, which are all leaned over, but honestly, because potatoes are a root vegetable, I think it kind of matters less how the top part looks. As long as they're photosynthesizing, they're just going to be growing sideways and it's going to be more of an eyesore. But let me show you what everything looks like now that I've gone around with my PVC pipe, which is the MVP tool of the night. We have this because we do shoulder stretches with this, so that's why I have it readily available on hand. So this is the yarrow patch, which really isn't that bad in the grand scheme. Over here, some sunflowers over here that are a couple of weeks away, and I'm hoping that they'll lean back up after again. This dill that's too tall. This is more of the yarrow. Here. More yarrow over here. My sea holly, which I've more or less gotten able to stand straight up, and the ones that I haven't been able to, honestly, I don't need that many. So there's always more that I can do to try to fix, but I am going to harvest a bit more right now and then make some more bouquets in the morning. It is now Friday morning and today is go time. We've got a few things on the list. I've made the retail store bouquets. Eric's gonna go deliver them. We also have the pickup for the CSA today. During that pickup, one of those customers has a pickup for a DIY bucket, so they're gonna pick both their bouquet and the bucket along the way. I wanna spend a little bit of time talking about the bucket, the DIY bucket, how I priced it, including what goes into it, as well as the difference between my retail store and my CSA bouquets that are both worth $25. I wanna start first by talking about this DIY bucket, which I sell for $75, and typically that includes anywhere from like 50 to 70 stems, pending what types of flowers you have. Now they're doing bud vases, and they specifically requested more wildflower style flowers, which is why you see less focals in here and more of these filler types. So what we've done here is we've included this is like 45 stems of yarrow, 15 stems of the sea holly, some of the double echinacea. This is, believe it or not, radish that has started bolting. So you can see there's that wildflower look, as well as a little bit of, it kind of looks like broccoli sprouts happening. So I think that would be really cool for the bud vases. We've got, let me put that back in here. We've got some focals in the form of, there's like one lily over here, but there's a bunch of anemones that are too short for me to use in bouquets, but perfectly possible for them to use in bud vases. So this over here is, I feel, appropriately priced for not only the quantity of blooms that they're getting, but also I'm factoring in my time to harvest, as well as the fact that, you know, I view this as an in-between wholesale and retail. So they're not buying from me enough quantity and enough frequency to qualify for true wholesale pricing. But also, you know, this is cheaper than what I would sell retail, especially if I were to put these into bouquets. The other thing I want to call out is that this sea holly all came from one plant. So sometimes you get plants that create really short stems, like side shoots, that you can't use in a bouquet, but they're perfect for things like bud vases. You can also go to my website for more information about how I listed the product. Typically, DIY buckets are always grower's choice, meaning that you don't have the ability as a customer to pick out the flowers that you want. Maybe you have some flexibility over color palette, but this is how a lot of growers will structure their buckets. And typically they're priced anywhere from like $65 all the way up to $95, depending on who's selling it, what types of focals they're gonna have, like especially dahlias, that might also increase the price. All right, so next I want to show you the difference between my CSA $25 bouquets and my retail store $25 bouquets. I think that even for the retail store, these are pretty generous, but what you can see is that we still have got 3 stems of lilies. We've got almost the same amount of yarrow. There's one less sea holly, and there's a little bit more filler in here. So the mountain mint, for example, versus over here, there's a little bit more going on. So in this one, I've got stock. There's an extra stem of sea holly. We've got some extra things like the rudbeckia over here. There's a little bit of filler mountain mint, but there's a little bit more variety as a whole. And the bouquets themselves definitely feel more bulky than the retail ones, but I still think these are a really great value for $25. So again, you know, these are customers that are your best customers. You want to treat them like that. A lot of times restaurants will do things like a free dessert or something like that. Instead of giving a discount, I like giving things like extra stems because that is inherently cheaper for you to fulfill. And I think the customer ends up appreciating that. So any customer who walks into that country store, which is close by, should definitely see a pronounced difference in the bouquets that they've gotten through me. And it's not necessarily because they come through me that I'm giving them this. It's because they are committing to 5 bouquets and have paid upfront for all of that. Just a couple of finishing touches to help me stay organized with pickup. I like to make a sign in Canva telling people that this is the place for flower pickup, which is pretty obvious, but more importantly, I do create a sign-in sheet with each person and it has each of the dates for subsequent pickups, and that helps me keep track of who has picked up and who hasn't. We are almost all done with pickup. I want to end this video on a bit of a positive note. Luckily, I came out today and the damage from the storm is definitely not as bad as it could have been, especially if I hadn't come out and done that PVC pipe exercise. So let me show you what everything looks like. Sunflowers are more or less back up. We've got a few stems that are like this, but that's okay. Most of them are doing really, really great. We've got the yarrow patch over here, which has come back up. It's amazing. Of course, we've got some stems that are flopping over, but the majority of them still look really, really great. The echinacea more or less did really well. The lilies have all still been standing up the way that they have been before. The rudbeckia looks really nice over here. More importantly, my potato plants look like that they're all coming back up straight. And the sea holly over here is definitely coming back up straight too. You know, nature has a way of fixing itself. I also have a quote that I'm known for, which is that no matter what happens, the sun will always rise from the east and still set in the west. And that's my way of reminding people that no matter what life goes on. And obviously I have some perspective now where if I lose everything in here, it's not the end of the world as long as we all still have our health, because that means we can still build another tomorrow. So with that, thank you so much for joining me this week. And if you're interested in this video, you may also be interested in this video up here where I talk about the first time that I ever made CSA bouquets.